Amen. Would you please turn in your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 5. We talked about how distracting the smartphones are in our lives and wanted to kind of wrap that up some tonight. But Proverbs chapter 5, we mentioned this, so a little review from last time. We love our phones. They're great to have on our road trip. We can call for help if we break down. We have GPS on them. We can listen to music. It's just so nice to be able to reach out for help if we need them. But they can be lethal if they become distracting. On a road trip, the main thing to pay attention to is the road. And because of phones, you can pay attention less than you should be paying attention to the road because of them. The same thing is true of life. Phones can be so helpful. We can make calls with them. We can pay with them at the drive-thru. We laughed about going to a vending machine, and you can wave your phone in front of a vending machine and get chips. How amazing. We laughed about what would Ben Franklin thought if he could see that. Now we can take pictures, watch videos. I told the story last time of getting the helium balloon from Strack and watching a video to figure it out. There was another time where I was with the ensemble years ago, and we had a flat tire with one of those white vans, and we were up on this. We were changing, going from one freeway to another freeway, so we were up on this concrete thing with a tiny shoulder. We had this flat tire. We're way up in the air in this one-lane thing, dropping down on either side. I'm like, hey, don't worry, I have AAA. I'm going to call them. They'll come, and this is one of those situations. I get out to change this tire and get flattened by somebody driving by. I'm going to let the professionals take care of this. And so AAA finally got there, and the guy came in the most beautiful truck you'd ever imagine. Big, shiny AAA truck, lights everywhere, toolboxes on the side. I'm like, oh, man, we are in good shape. And he goes, do you have a spare? And I'm like, yes, it's underneath the back of the van there. He goes, how do you get to it? And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of thought that maybe you would. Let's watch a video. And so me and the AAA guy on the side of the freeway have my phone up like this, and we're both watching a video on how to change a tire on a Chevy Express van. And so anyway, me and the tire change guy watching a video on how to change a tire. So that was pretty exciting. It came in handy. But here we are in Proverbs chapter 5. It talks about the strange woman, and of course, she's going to try to push toward immorality, fornication, adultery, those types of things. But I also think the strange woman, we mentioned this, pushes us toward the allure of this world. And we looked at that verse, and we'll mention that again. But again, we studied those verses last time. And then in verse 6, one of her goals is, lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life. So when we're driving, it becomes dangerous when we become unaware of what's ahead of us. And so her goal is in the path of life for us to be unaware of what's ahead of us, lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life. And so who is this strange woman? Certainly she's the embodiment of temptation toward immorality, but I think she's also the allure of this world. How many of us can say with our smartphones, oh, I don't detect any drawing toward the world on my smartphone? None of us. None of us. The strange woman and her allure is drawing us right from our smartphone. We have to be so careful. James 4:4, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that friendship with the world. So it seems to me it's in the same context. So the immorality the strange woman draws toward in spiritual things, there's this allure, this friendship with the world, this enmity with God. Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. So we come now to part 2, the dangers of distracted living. So are we ready with my picture? All right, show them my picture. So that was June of 2000. Go ahead and leave it up there. June of 2020. And that was right up here at the light beside Jewel. And so my wife calls, and she says, somebody just rear-ended me. And you know, so I'm like, so I zip up there, and I got there before the police. And so this fellow the guy was okay. He was out of his car, and he was pretty upset. He's like punching his hood. That wasn't from him though. That was from rear-ending our vehicle. And it's funny, he was just out there, you know, my wife's like, okay, here's this guy that's really upset. And he goes up to, are you guys okay? And my wife put the window down, you know, this much. Like, psst. It's like, yes. I was like, are you guys okay? Yes, and now we're just waiting for the police. It's like, all right. So he heads back and probably continues pummeling the car. I got there, and there he is standing there, and he tells me, when I get there, he goes, I'm telling you, I just glanced down for a second at my phone. It just seemed like I glanced down for a second, and there she was completely at a stop at the stoplight. I was distracted. These phones are distracting us way more than we realize. Distracting us from important things, and two, far too often unimportant things or even sinful things. And every one of us is like, yep. And may I say that sometimes it's the unimportant things that become a gateway to those sinful things. Sometimes just the vain things. Pretty soon they open doors to things I never thought I would be here. I was just doing empty, vain things, and I found myself in a bad place. Beware. It wasn't too long ago that Alec was doing some pickups for a bus. I remember catching him, and probably a lot of the parents had the same conversation. Alec, don't be texting and driving. You have a very important job to do, driving safely, and it requires more attention than you will think it does. It requires more attention than you will think it does. Trust me and obey. You know, there was an old expression, they would say, well, that person's so poor, he can't even pay attention. Right? Well, I want us all to think that I'm poor as far as attention goes. We all have limited attention. And often we're tying it up with the wrong things, thinking our powers of attention are greater than they actually are. Consequently, we don't have enough attention left over for the truly important things. Alec, a young driver, probably tempted, like most all of us, to slice off a bit of attention, thinking that there's enough left over to drive, like this guy did. I can afford to slice off just a bit of attention. I'll have enough left over to pay attention to the things I should, and he was wrong. Boy, we all know better, don't we? How many of us, probably every single one of us, got distracted by a little something, and by the time we looked up, we're half a lane over? And you're like, Lord, thank you that the lane was empty. Thank you. And then we say, thank you for being merciful, Lord. And please help me to be less careless. So go ahead and leave that up there for now, brother. Some stats on distracted driving from 2024. An estimated 14% of fatal crashes in the U.S. involved a cell phone. They say that texting was 6 times more likely to cause an accident than driving drunk. So our kids aren't drinking alcohol, hopefully, and hopefully they never do. But a lot of them have that phone, and in this context, they're saying that phone is more dangerous than drinking. So we're like, well, my kid's not a drunk, but they have uncontrolled, maybe a little more uncontrolled access to the phone than they should, but they're not a drunk. It's interesting with this object lesson here that it's more dangerous with the distracted driving. Distracted driving was involved in 8% of fatal crashes, 15% of injury crashes, 14% of all police-reported motor vehicle crashes. Other drivers admitted to driving while talking on the phone, using an app, adjusting a GPS device, eating or drinking, applying makeup. Probably seen that next to you. You're like driving along, you look over like, oh, get away from that driver. Taking a photo or a video. I'll be reading some stories if we have time. According to the AAA Foundation, it can take up to 27 seconds for the mental distraction from using a phone to wear off. So it's saying that you can have your eyes back on the road, but part of your mind is still with whatever you were just doing. It takes up to 27 seconds, even though your eyes are back on the road, for your mind to catch up. You're taking your eyes off the road. They say when you're texting and driving, it isn't uncommon for to have all of your attention pulled away from the road for up to 5 seconds. And if you're traveling 55 miles an hour, that's the length of a football field. And the Super Bowl is coming, and you know that a lot can happen in 100 yards. A lot can happen in 100 yards. And you're just careening along in your medical or your metal torpedo, unaware for a whole football field of what's going on. 77% of young adults are very or somewhat confident that they can safely text while driving. We're overconfidence. This guy was confident that he could be fine texting and driving. 55% of young adult drivers claim it's easy to text when they drive. But it's a big problem. Teens who text while driving spend approximately 10% of their driving time outside of their lane, presuming upon the mercy of God. And then, in living distracted lives, when the phone we have that concentration taken from godly living, you find those people are living a large percentage of their life outside the lane where God wants them. Again, presuming upon God's mercy. In many places, it's illegal. But that law is important for other people. I'm different. Adults, we've got to set the example. Part of the reason why young drivers think it's okay to text and drive is because they've watched you do it. I read an article. This was just in the news, and so I clipped it for later. But so this person says there are many reasons to hate influencers. So I don't know why he disliked them. But this one ranks near the top. A 19-year-old Minnesota woman, Svi Lynn Snickers, last name, blew through a stop sign back in September without touching her brakes. She was going 50 miles an hour when she rammed her RAV4 into a bus full of children, sending it rolling into a ditch. Several of the children were injured, along with the bus driver. Why did she miss the stop sign? In an interview with the state trooper, Snickers said that she had been on her phone in the moments leading up to the crash. At first, she said she was sending a voice text on Snapchat, but then she admitted to recording a video. A search warrant of her cell phone found that she had been taking a screenshot in the app seconds before the 911 call was initiated. She was recording herself in the car and completely missed a school bus that she T-boned. 5 children suffered broken bones or concussions. Medical reports indicate several others experienced bruising, cuts, pain. Her distracted driving led to her having 5 felony counts, 17 gross misdemeanor counts of criminal vehicular operation. She wanted to be internet famous, and she was, just not the way she hoped. Distracted driving is dangerous. Phones are wonderful tools on a road trip, but they can lead to distracted driving, which has proven extremely injurious and often fatal. TikTok. Here's an article from June 23rd, 2025. It says, January 23rd, not yet, so in the future. So the article's entitled TikTok, Weapon of Mass Distraction. Weapon of mass distraction. While there has been much suspicion that the CCP uses TikTok for influence operations such as disseminating Chinese propaganda, the app can be weaponized in even more dangerous ways. Its For You algorithm leverages machine learning to track users' attention, and it employs this knowledge to show them unprompted whatever content is most likely to hold their attention. To hold their attention, making it difficult to break away. I thought of like electronic hypnotism of sorts. This makes using it a far more passive and an addictive experience than other social media platforms, which gives it the potential to inflict long-term harm on young Westerners, keeping them distracted, shortening their attention spans, and ultimately atrophying their brains. The app's ability to cause mass TikTok brain in young Westerners should prompt consideration of its use as a new kind of civilizational weapon. The first thing that should raise suspicions is that the CCP forbids Chinese kids from using it. They steer them towards something more educational. As American tech ethicist Tristan Harris pointed out, this other platform is a spinach version of the app filled with science experiments, educational videos, instead of the twerkers and other ridiculous things. TikTok has imposed screen time limits for younger users to prevent it from being completely banned. Further, unlike TikTok, this other app in China is only accessible to kids for 40 minutes a day, and it cannot be accessed between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Has the CCP enforce such rules to protect its people from what it intends to inflict on the West? When one examines the philosophical doctrines behind the rules, it becomes clear that the CCP doesn't just believe that apps like TikTok make people stupid, but that they destroy civilizations. So the question is, are communists more careful with their young people than many Christian parents in America? Sadly, yes. Yeah, they are. Tonight, let's make a decision before God to know what our kids are doing and to control it. Every parent in here has a lazy streak. Every one. I should probably dig into whatever that is. I'm tired. Every parent. Me and every parent in here. Every one of us. And here's an area where I just don't feel, well, you need to feel like it. Ask God for the strength to be the parent you need to be. Every parent in here has a touch of cowardice. Every one of us. It's like, well, I'm afraid to confront my child about that because they'll blow up and, all right? We all have a touch of cowardice. Quit being a coward. I'm talking to myself as well. Quit being a coward. If there's sin in your child's life or they have access to something they shouldn't, you get in there and figure it out and love them back to where they should be. Quit being a coward. And I'm talking to myself as well. We don't like to, I can't fight that. You figure out how to fight that battle. Every bit of us has a touch of laziness and cowardice, and then we fight worldliness. Well, I can't stand against that in my kid's life. I've got weaknesses there. I think we've got some stuff to confess before the Lord. And say, Lord, please forgive me. I need to get in there and know what my child is doing, and I need to be careful myself in this area. Alec, as I talked to my son, listen, son, Alec, operating a car takes more concentration than you realize. And Alec, can I also tell you that living a God-honoring life also takes more concentration than you realize. Parents and children were distracted. Americans were distracted. Living a godly life takes more concentration than we realize, and we're not paying enough attention to it. We're distracted. From explodingtopics.com, time spent using smartphones This is 2024 statistics. Smartphone usage stats as of June 4th, 2024. I think that is already passed. The average person spends 4 hours and 37 minutes on their phone each day. As bad as this is, other sites had a higher number. And this site has actually risen since then. But back to, if we're only spending just over 4.5 hours, that's equivalent to 1 day every week that people are spending on their phone. A day on their phone. 6 days a month. 72 days a year. 2.4 months on the phone. Now, someday you and I will stand before God. Do you believe that? And then we can explain to him that we didn't have time to live for him. The unimportant things and the sinful things were just too gripping for me to get serious about living a non-distracted life. I don't want to have that conversation with the Lord. How about you? Social media, here's an article, the Friday Church News Notes, January 3rd, 2025, called Social Media, a Magnet to Draw the Lord's People to the World. Facebook is filled with worldly people and worldly things. You aren't forced to participate in worldly things, and you can control your own Facebook page and your friends, but staying in control is no small task. Facebook doesn't want to make it easy for its users to shut themselves off from notifications and suggested friends and likes and such. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok are the devil's nose rings to take young people wherever he wills. The young people in our church who are growing spiritually are those who have given up social media. And we have many of these. One reader said, many years ago I left Facebook for the simple fact that I found too many so-called Christians that I have grown up with or went to Bible college with that left their first love, and it became very depressing and troublesome. Now, I'm not telling you've got to get off of there, but I'm not on there, and I think I'm fine. And I know it is a way to connect. But I think it was Stephen Gunzenhauser that he goes, well, I'm on Facebook, and I have limits. I'm allowed 20 minutes a day or something, and then my phone shuts me out. I get on there, check what I feel like I need to, then I'm off. So I don't have the choice to get hypnotized or held against my will for hours and hours. A pastor says, I have taught our young people not to be on Facebook, and the ones who stayed in our church are the ones who followed my advice. I just want to give some warnings tonight. And of course, warnings are for other people, right? So I asked Brother Joel Porzinski if I could share this story. So this morning it was pretty slippery. Did you notice that? It was pretty slippery this morning. So I came over early because I had a staff meeting. So there was a bunch of people down here. I knew they were coming. And our driveway was slippery. And so there were, Elio had people out salting sidewalks, and Adam, they were trying to prep the roads. And so I got out, and it's slippery. And so I call Adam, like, Adam, would you send out a Teams post to warn everybody that it's slippery? And hopefully people see it before they get out into this and try to get here. And so we had somebody at the top of the driveway warning people to slow down. We had somebody in the back trying to make sure people were cautious coming from their vehicle to the back door. And so Brother Joel, he gets his phone. He's in the house, and he's like, here's a warning. It's slippery outside, I guess. It's like, that'll be handy for somebody. And so he throws open the door and takes a step. And he said, I landed on my hip so hard that I was so dazed that I'm just laying there for a little while, gathering my composure on the slippery deck. And he's like, that hurt. And then he said he finally gets back up on his feet, and it's super slippery, and he tries to get out there. And I'm like, brother, I'm like, use that for the rest of your life. That's a great sermon illustration. You received a warning. You're like, huh. That's good for somebody. And then stepped right out, not taking the warning seriously enough. All right. So tonight, I think there's a warranted warning here. And those of us, again, you're human like me, and like Brother Porzinski. A warning. That'll be good for somebody. But you don't have to lay on the ground because you didn't pay close enough attention to the warning. You can pay close enough attention to the warning. Here's an article on witchcraft on social media. The following is excerpted from Young Women Gravitate Toward Modern Witchcraft, Washington Post, October 29, 2024. Today's witches are young influencers with popular social media accounts. They host podcasts and post astrological divinations from their downtown dwellings. The witches of TikTok rack up hundreds of thousands of views and likes daily. Astrology's influence is growing, especially among younger Americans. According to YouGov's 2022 poll, more than 1 in 4 Americans say the stars influence their lives. That includes 37% of adults younger than 30. The astrology market in particular has grown significantly from $2.2 billion in value to 2018 to $12.8 billion in 2021. By 2031, it is expected to reach $22.8 billion. Allied Market Research says women are more likely to buy in. And again, men, they're just like, oh, there's sin. I like sin. And then women like the intrigue, that like the story the devil can tell. Just like the Bible explains that Adam was not deceived. He just chose sin. He was pretty simple. Sin, where the woman was deceived, the Bible tells us. In 2023 survey, the Pew Research Center explores details of this growing interest in spirituality. It said 42% of adults believe that the dead can communicate. Nearly half of the respondents said they believe the dead can lend the living a helping hand. And again, you'd say, why are you reading that stuff to us? My kid's not involved in that. Are you sure? No, but I'm pretty sure. How are you pretty sure? I can't imagine. You better imagine. What access do they have to the strange woman, the allure of this world? Because whatever access they have, the world has that access to them. And this is some of the stuff that has access to our kids. On Reddit, such groups as Witches versus Patriarchy even share politically charged hexes. One user recently described a freezer spell. So somebody wanted a freezer spell to aim at a conservative politician. The freezer spell claimed to have the power to symbolically freeze the influence of someone by sealing their name in bottles under the waning moon. Witches versus Patriarchy has more than 750,000 active members. Australia in the news not too long ago. Australia bans social media for children under 16. Why do you suppose the unsaved out there are thinking, this is a problem? We better do something. And a lot of Christian parents are, well, my kid's not, do you know for sure? I trust them. Which is a way to cover up for laziness and cowardice and worldliness. I trust them is not what God told you to do. The Bible says that a child left to himself brings his mother to shame. God doesn't want you leaving them to themselves because you trust them. That's us covering for our cowardice, our laziness, and our worldliness. And it's time that parents quit doing that. The Australian Parliament passed a law banning social media for children under 16. The law will make platforms such as TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, X, and Instagram liable for fines of up to 50 million Australian dollars, which is 33 million US. for systemic failures to prevent children younger than 16 from holding accounts. So, I mean, wow, this government's getting serious about this. But among other things, the glaring problem is it puts the responsibility for protecting children on the shoulders of the social media company. Where does God put the responsibility? Another article, the social media, the devil's mixing bowl. Social media is the devil's mixing bowl to weaken Christians in their spiritual stand. Facebook and other social media tend to mix everything together. The holy and the unholy, the sacred and the profane, the spiritual and the worldly, the truth and heresy, righteousness and unrighteousness. In this manner, social media provides a direct and powerful and continual assault on biblical holiness and purity. Consider a couple of warnings that we receive from Christian friends. When someone leaves a good church and starts living according to the world, many people continue to remain friends with them and like everything they do. They will encounter things on Facebook that their church is against, such as immodest clothing, rock music, drinking, smoking, dancing, wrong dating, wrong marriages. They hear these things preached against at church, and then they approve them on Facebook. They will not separate from people who are going in the wrong direction. From that standpoint, I believe Facebook has done great damage to churches. I have friends in independent Baptist churches around the world that I have observed that have observed that this takes place everywhere. Another said, I found that I reconnected with people that the Lord had separated me from. The Lord geographically moved me away from an area that I did not need to live in. When I got saved, He removed me from the things that were not spiritually or physically healthy for me. The Lord saved me from a very wicked life. As a Christian, I had no business reconnecting with them. Satan had me believe that I could be a witness to them, and it didn't happen. There were 0 salvations as a result of me reconnecting with the old people in my life on Facebook. This article is called a Smart Mother versus a Smartphone. We have a teen daughter whom we briefly allowed to have a smartphone and iPad. We took every precaution to shield and prevent her from accessing things that would be an ungodly influence in her life. We placed parental controls on both devices, performed regular and unannounced checks on each device to ensure nothing was going on behind our backs that should not have been. Most of the time, she would play games or watch YouTube tutorials and shows that we approved. In the year we allowed her access to these devices, we had no real problems except the occasional disobedience of getting on the device when she was not supposed to be on it. Nevertheless, the one main consistent and overriding problem we encountered time and time again was a certain spirit these devices seemed to place over her. She went from having a sweet spirit in all her ways and relationships to being lazy, selfish, sneaky, delayed in obedience, which is disobedience, disrespectful, and having a bad attitude. Now, to anyone else, they would not be able to see the change as it was very subtle. For about a year, we went back and forth with her privilege to be on the phone and iPad, when finally I started to see a pattern emerge. When she was on the devices, she had an ugly spirit and character problems. When she was grounded from it, her sweet spirit returned, and the character problems seemed to disappear. So we decided that she was not ready for such devices because it was doing more harm than good. It's hard enough to raise godly children. We don't need to add things that will make it that much more harder. It's foolishness. So we kept her off all these devices, put a password on every electronic device in the house for a year. If she needed any internet access, we logged her onto the computer, and she did what she needed to do and logged off. After a year off electronics, we recently decided we would allow her access to her iPad again, especially since now it was summertime. Again, I on my prayer list, I have there, beware the change of routine. The devil can sneak some interesting things in when the routine changes. Routine's a good thing to help protect us. And then sometimes on summertime and this and that, let's let down our spiritual hair a little bit, and beware the change of routine. Dark things can sneak into your life if you're not watching. So we gave her that access. However, it didn't last very long. After only a few weeks, we were starting to have very familiar character problems once again. I warned her. I would come down. Hey, you be careful. And she would shape up for a few days, and then it would be back to the problems, another warning, and then a short shaping up. He said, I finally had my last straw. And we were going to take away the electronics. Boy, did this unleash a rebellious spirit in her that lasted for days. And that goes back to that cowardice. I believe there's a lot of parents who's like, I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare do that. I would be in trouble with my child. And every one of us fears that. But God, you do the right thing. You trust God and you do the right thing. And my kid will be upset with me for days. But be loving enough to have whatever battle you need to have. I faced a rebellion head on and refused to overlook any of it. If it meant losing my sanity to fix the problem, then so be it. She is worth it. Finally, we got over her rebellion of losing the iPad. Now we're back to seeing that sweet spirit once again. I just informed her that we wouldn't be introducing personal electronic devices for a while if that's the spirit we were going to encounter if it gets taken away. Obviously, she has some maturing to do. If personal electronics become a god in your life, then it's foolishness for us to allow you to have it. Sometimes there are things in life that on the surface seem to add quality and convenience, but in reality only brings a multitude of heartache. I'm sure she didn't like to hear this, but that's of no concern. We will be her parents first and foremost, even if it makes us unpopular. Brother Ramos sent out a quote the other day, texted it out. And it said, biblical Christianity is unpopular, but popular Christianity is unbiblical. Which one are we aimed at? Now, many parents will say, no, it's the job of the school or the church to teach my children control here. I just want to enjoy my kids when they come home, not fight with them over the dangerous things that the school warns them about or the church. Plus, it's super hard to get on them to be under control when I really am not. And I'm fine with what I'm doing, and consequently, I kind of don't mind so much what they're doing. We're worldly together. But the question is God pleased with the content we're filling our minds with? Do you remember when you used to ask that question? Well, we need to start asking that again. And those of you that are asking that, is God pleased with the content I'm filling my mind with? Distracted living. We are missing some important things. Like the truck that's at a standstill in front of you. Oh, I can handle it. I can give this much attention to this, and I have plenty left over. We don't have as much left over as we think. We're missing some important things like raising our kids, serving God, time in Bible study, fellowship with God, real fervent, effectual prayer. Can you say that, prayer is precious, and I spend a good long time in prayer? And I know that it should be righteous and effectual. Oh no, so I'm able to come before the Lord in purity and have times of effectual prayer. We're saying, I'm not doing that. What is my life full of? I think we just read about it. Prayer is precious. Precious. We should be doing more of it. We're missing out on working on our marriages, caring for the people in our church family with needs, reaching the lost in our extended families or even next door to us. So, the police, they're out there watching for distracted drivers. Going along on the roads out there while distracted is dangerous. for the driver and for passengers and for others who share the road. And I submit to you that venturing along the paths of this life, it is super important when we do that we're free from distractions as well. James 1:8 says, a double-minded man is unstable. So when you're trying to drive and do whatever he was doing, it leads to instability and crashed cars. To live this life distracted leads to an instability and crashed lives. These phones are making believers double-minded. These phones are making believers unstable. Imagine what God can do if the believers in his churches got stable again. If we weren't double-minded. If we took control of our lives and said, oh God, I was deceived. Please forgive me. I was wrong. I'm not going to live a distracted life anymore. These things are not going to be toys in my life. They're not going to be addictions. I'm going to be careful about them. Lord, I'm going to put whatever protection I need on there. I'm going to make sure it can't hold me. I'm going to quit pretending like it doesn't have those addictive properties. And I'm going to confess the vanity I've been guilty of. And I'm going to confess the gateway that vanity has been that took me places that I didn't think I would go to. Stable believers, there aren't very many left. The smartphone, the devil's distractions have done their awful work. But we can look to the Lord, and he can help us. In the end of Proverbs 5, verse 21, it says, for the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. So, the strange woman, she wants us to be distracted from what lies ahead, but God, he pays attention to what lies ahead. For each of our lives, the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. God is looking out ahead of you, and the solution to this life is just to be tuned into him all the time. Oh God, what do you see? What do you see? I love you, Lord. I love you. Help me to do right, Lord, because I fear you. That's the beginning of wisdom. I love you. Your goodness leads me to repentance. I love you, Lord. What do you see? Thank you for caring enough about me to look at the path ahead of my life. God sees the path ahead and tries to warn us. The police are out there trying to keep their eyes out for distracted warnings or distracted drivers. But who keeps their eye out for those now? Do we have people that are looking out for distracted drivers? We have parents that should be looking out for distracted people, right? Pastors, teachers, even your fellow church members. We're here to provoke one another to love and to good works. Boy, what's sad is that the adults are often just as guilty. Do what I say, not as I do. No, adults, let's be better than that. A lot of the reasons why we can't help them get control of their phones is because we are having a hard time with it. So be upfront with your weaknesses together and make some decisions. The police are cleaning up destroyed lives after crashes from distracted driving, and too many pastors are doing the same with wrecked lives that crashed because the strange woman had her way. By God's grace, let's end distracted living. Lord, I've been living a distracted life. For 2025 and the rest of my days, I want you to have my attention. All right, so we think back to Brother Porzinski. That warning will be good for somebody. What are you going to do with your warning tonight? The strange woman, she has an allure to the things of this world. But can we sing that song? I am resolved no longer to linger charmed by this world's delight. Things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sight. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. Let's stand together, heads bowed and our eyes closed. We'll have a time of invitation. Won't you get serious and take the warning tonight? Tell God, I'm not going to live a distracted life. Lord, I owe you my attention. And by your grace, I'm going to make sure you have it. As they play, you do some business with God.